Good morning, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, or India's voice to the world. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. Coming up in the next hour, UN Security Council to hold an emergency meeting on UAE's request to seek pause to Gaza fighting. US President calls Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, urges to protect civilians and increase aid to Gaza. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says protection of civilians in Gaza conflict is paramount, warns Gaza growing more desperate by the hour.
I've always been consistent in my call for strict compliance of the well-established principles and rule of international humanitarian law. The protection of civilians is paramount.
In sports, India remains unbeaten, registers 6th consecutive win by defeating England in Cricket World Cup encounter. The United Nations Security Council will hold an emergency meeting today to discuss the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The meeting is being convened on the request of UAE. The UN Security Council earlier failed in its attempt to stop the war in Gaza, as its members were unable to approve either the United States resolution calling for humanitarian pauses or Russia's calling for an immediate ceasefire. Israel has vowed that Israeli military will pursue Hamas's Gaza leader Yahya Sinwar until it reach him. IDF spokesperson Hagri in a briefing also explained that the ground operation in Gaza has intensified.
The ground operation in Gaza Strip continues and intensifies. Land, air and sea forces operated in Gaza today and eliminated many terrorists. We will pursue Yahya Sinwar. We will pursue him until we reach him.
As offensive intensifies in Gaza, the Israeli military repeated its call to Gazan people to leave northern region immediately. Military's chief spokesperson in a televised briefing on Sunday said that its calls on Palestinians in the Gaza Strip to evacuate southward was now urgent.
Over the last 2 weeks, we have been calling on residents of the northern Gaza Strip and Gaza City to relocate southwards temporarily. Relocating southward is for their personal safety. We are today emphasizing that this is an urgent call.
The Red Crescent and doctors in Gaza said they have received warnings from Israeli military to evacuate the Al-Quds hospital in Gaza immediately. However, the staff of the hospital have said that moving the hundreds of patients currently being treated there would not be possible, as some are seriously ill.
We don't have the means to evacuate Al-Quds hospital. We have over 400 patients who are inside the hospital. Many of them are in the intensive care unit. Evacuating them means killing them. That's why we refuse the evacuation order. We call on the international community to intervene immediately to stop a humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding.
Clouds of smoke covered the sky over Gaza as the Israeli army intensified their operation against Hamas. Israel is expanding ground operations in Gaza, and its fighter jets have struck hundreds more Hamas targets in what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called the second phase of a 3-week-old war. Telephone and internet communications were partially restored in Gaza after more than day-long blackout that had badly impacted rescue operations. Meanwhile, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has reiterated his call for immediate release of hostages in Gaza and a humanitarian ceasefire.
The world is witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe taking place before our eyes. More than 2 million people with nowhere safe to go are being denied the essentials for life: food, water, shelter, and medical care, while being subjected to relentless bombardments. I urge all those with responsibility to step back from the brink. And I reiterate my appeal for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the delivery of a sustained humanitarian relief at a scale that meets the needs of the people of Gaza. We must join forces to end this nightmare for the people of Gaza, Israel, and all those affected around the world, including here in Nepal.
International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan has visited the Rafah crossing on the Egypt-Gaza border amid accusations that both Israel and Hamas are violating international law in the ongoing war. Briefing media in Egypt, Khan said impeding relief supplies to Gaza's population may constitute a crime under the International Criminal Court's jurisdiction. He also said Israel must make efforts without further delay to make sure civilians receive basic food, medicine. United Nations officials have added that aid supplies are limited and do not correspond to the huge need on the ground.
And I want to underline clearly to Israel that there must be discernible efforts without further delay to make sure civilians receive basic food, medicine, anesthetics, morphine. We hear reports of operations taking place without these basic medicines, as if we're in the Middle Ages.
US President Joe Biden also spoke with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of Egypt on Sunday, lauding the efforts of Egypt for playing a leading role in the efforts to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aids to affected civilians of Gaza. The two leaders reiterated their commitment to continue accelerating assistance flowing into Gaza beginning Sunday and ensuring a steady supply in the coming days. According to a press statement issued by the White House on Sunday, the two leaders also discussed the importance of protecting civilian lives, respect for international humanitarian law, and ensuring that Palestinians in Gaza are not displayed to Egypt or any other nation. As Israeli defense forces have entered Gaza and are carrying out second phase of the on-ground operations against Hamas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke with US President Joe Biden on Sunday. Though Netanyahu's office didn't provide much detail on the conversation, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on Sunday in a TV interview said that US believes Israel should take every means possible to distinguish between Palestinian civilians and Hamas militants in its military operation in Gaza.
War, of course, is highly unpredictable, so it's difficult to predict how it will play out. What I will say this, Israel was attacked in a brutal, vicious terrorist attack. They are taking steps to go after the terrorists who struck them. They have been doing so from the air. They're now doing so on the ground. And Hamas, this brutal terrorist organization that conducted the attack, is hiding behind the civilian population, which puts an added burden on Israel to differentiate between the terrorists and innocent civilians. But it doesn't lessen their responsibility under international humanitarian law and the laws of war to do all in their power to protect the civilian population. And that's equally true moving in on the ground as it is taking strikes from the air.
Jake Sullivan, the White House National Security Advisor, has said that the burden is now on Israel to distinguish between civilians and Hamas, even as it launches its ground operations. Here are some details from a correspondent from West Bank.
Jake Sullivan said yesterday that, it is now Israel's responsibility to distinguish between the civilians and Hamas. I think what he means is that Hamas is using, innocent civilians as human shield. What Israel released of the Al-Shifa hospital, where there are a number of patients due to the shelling, there are their relatives, there are more patients coming in due to the intensified military campaign. But beneath that, Hamas has its command and control center, and it has its operational base. So there are a lot of tunnels, and those tunnels run under the city. You have buildings over them, people living in them. Yoav Gallant is very clear that the Israeli defense minister, that they will go in for a close combat. In that situation, the civilian count will go up steeply. Most parts of the world, even the staunchest of Israeli allies like the United States, are telling them that the burden is on you. Now it is your responsibility to see that the civilian, innocent civilian lives are not lost or are minimized in this. The steps they would do is, one, they would increase the information warfare by, not allowing videos to come out of there, cutting off their telephone lines, communication networks, internet is down there, many places are in darkness, so that, messages don't pass around, videos don't pass around. Secondly, heightened diplomacy. There are diplomats all around the world are at it. At the military level, I think they would be working on specific intelligence on where the Hamas bases are, where their command control structures are, and how they can go in. I hear that they could use sponge bombs. Sponge bomb is a kind of a bomb where it's like a foam which you send inside the tunnels, and then it solidifies into something hard and hits whoever it's targeted at. They say it will be targeted at the Hamas fighters or Hamas guerrillas or Hamas terrorists. So these are the measures militarily they would take. But as I said, diplomatic measures and also the information warfare will be an integral part of that.
And as Israel expanded its offensive in the Gaza Strip, thousands of people broke into aid workhouses in Gaza to loot flour and basic hygiene products. United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency director said the looting marks the growing frustration among people.
This is an indication that people in Gaza have reached a breaking point. The levels of desperation, their frustration, their fear, their concern. They have been living under tight siege for more than 3 weeks. Bombardments continue. They have lost so much. They are grieving themselves. They have become displaced. So the levels of frustration and despair are really very high, and people are hitting rock bottom when it comes to their patience, their ability to take more.
As humanitarian situations worsen in Israel-Hamas war zone, new U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Sunday he expects floor action this week to advance a funding bill to support Israel exclusively, even though U.S. President Joe Biden is pushing for a $106 billion aid package for Israel and Ukraine combined. Johnson has said bolstering support for Israel should top the U.S. national security agenda in the aftermath of October 7th surprise attack on the Jewish state by Hamas militants. Members of the U.S. House of Representatives, which Republicans controlled by a narrow majority, are scheduled to return from a recess on Wednesday. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and French President Emmanuel Macron expressed their concern about getting humanitarian support into Gaza. In a telephonic conversation, both leaders discussed about the risks of the Israel-Hamas conflict spreading in the wider regions. The leaders also reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself within the limits of international law and the importance of finding a way to release the hostages held by Hamas. Both leaders said the long-stalled two-state solution envisaging independent states for the Israelis and Palestinians was the best way to create peace. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his UK counterpart James Cleverly had a phone conversation on Sunday. The two leaders discussed the Israel-Hamas conflict and the need for humanitarian access to Gaza for Palestinian civilians and the immediate release of hostages. According to an official statement, both leaders also reiterated Israel's right to self-defense and noted ways to collaborate with regional partners to pause the conflict escalation. In the meantime, James Cleverly also engaged in discussions with his Israeli counterparts Eli Cohen and reaffirmed the UK's backing of Israel's right to self-defense in accordance with international humanitarian law. Meanwhile, Israeli military also carried out strikes on military infrastructure inside Syria. It said it was responding to Sunday's launches from Syria toward Israeli territory. Concerns about the risk of a wider West Asia conflict have risen in recent days, with the U.S. dispatching more military assets to the region as Israel plummeled targets in Gaza and Hamas supporters in Syria and Lebanon. Well, still to come on DD India News Hour. And amid growing concerns about North Koreans' threats, the US and South Korea are holding a large-scale joint drills. Bangladesh charges opposition leader party members with murder. Prayer service was held for victims of main shooting in Lewiston.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. And Russia and Ukraine pressed on with their military operations on Sunday, striking each other's military targets, including drones, command posts and electronic warfare systems, according to official briefings from the two countries. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that its forces have repelled multiple attacks by Ukrainian army and shot down multiple Ukrainian drones. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces continued their offensive operations and launched multiple airstrikes on Russian military personnel and hit Russian command posts and other targets. The US and South Korea are holding large-scale joint drills involving stealth planes to boost their joint capabilities this week. It comes amid growing concerns about North Korean threats to stability in the region. DD India correspondent Patrick Folk gives us details.
Well, the vigilant defense exercises will last until Friday, and they're described as mega drills involving 130 aircraft from both countries, including South Korean F-35A fighter jets, as well as American F-18 fighters that are normally based in Japan. And the drills are designed to enhance combined military capabilities and come amidst North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. They also come following a week of joint combat training between the US and South Korea at the Korea Combat Training Center in an area that appeared to simulate fighting in Pyongyang. And this involved high-tech weapon systems, including drones carrying weapons, as well as unmanned vehicles, and are part of efforts by both countries to modernize combat capabilities. It's also significant because it comes amid heightened tensions between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea.
Bangladesh's main opposition leader and over 100 other top party members have been charged with the murder of a policeman killed in mass demonstrations ahead of upcoming elections. Among the arrested are the senior members of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party leadership who potentially face the death penalty if they are found guilty. Police said Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir had been detained for interrogation for Saturday's violence in which a police officer and a protester were killed, and at least 26 police ambulances were torched or damaged. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced on Sunday that his country was willing to invest in gas and critical minerals in Nigeria, Africa's largest oil producer. This marks Scholz's third visit to the region in 2 years, reflecting the increasing importance of the energy-rich region, in which Berlin has traditionally had little involvement. At a joint briefing with Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, Scholz said that there is a willingness to invest, especially in critical minerals.
Nigeria ist ein wichtiger Markt.
Another important element of our cooperation is point 3, our energy partnership. This is about gas, but also about hydrogen, as a gas of the future clean and climate neutral. We already operate a hydrogen office here and want to make progress overall in the expansion of renewable energies.
Und es hat sich auch
Liberal politician Carlos Gallen won the mayoral elections in Colombia's capital, Bogota, dealing a defeat to President Gustavo Petro's leftist coalition in votes. Petro, a 63-year-old economist who was elected in August 2022 as the first leftist president in Colombia's history, has low poll ratings, and Sunday's outcome is expected to influence the 2026 presidential election. While Gustavo Bolivar, a staunch ally of the president who placed third, described the result as a punishment vote for the government. And the G7, consisting of the world's major industrial powers, has called for the immediate removal of import restrictions imposed by China on Japanese food products. This move comes after Japan released treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The statement issued by the G7 trade ministers also expressed concern over China's growing economic coercion through trade. China retaliated by labeling this form of economic coercion and accused the G7 of disrupting global production and supply chains. And a prayer service was held for the victims of a main shooting in the city of Lewiston. Leaders of various faiths spoke at the Basilica of Saints and Peter and Paul. The shooting incident of last week had killed 18 people and left 13 more injured in the aftermath. The community also held a candlelight vigil for the victims earlier on Sunday.
So we came here today with broken hearts, and I believe with what will be shared, we leave with nurtured souls. None of us have the strength to do this alone, but we have the ability to thrive together.
Our hearts goes out to the family and the victims as we share their pain and sorrow. On speaking on behalf of Muslim community in Lewiston and urban Islamic area, we all condemn the horrific act that has happened. We stand together firm in our commitment to promote unity and compassion.
Because our faith teaches us that God is at work even in this present broken age, I have hope for this community. I have hope that we will heal from this. I have hope that we will not only heal from this, but that collectively will become a better community.
UN Secretary-General Guterres warned of dire consequences during his visit to Kathmandu, highlighting the alarming rate at which the Nepal's glaciers are melting. The International Center for Integrated Mountain Development warns that Hindu Kush Himalaya glaciers could lose 75% of their volume by the century's end, putting millions of lives at risk from flooding and water shortage.
I will visit the Himalayas to see for myself the terrible impact of the climate crisis on the glaciers. The situation is dire and it is accelerating. Nepal has lost close to a third of its ice in just over 30 years, and glaciers are melting at record rates. The impact on communities is devastating, and I will meet local people in the Himalayas to hear directly from them about how they are affected.
Helicopter surveillance helped Mexican authorities to evaluate the damage caused by Hurricane Otis while working to restore power to the southern state of Guerrero. Broken boats and smashed yachts were scattered along the coast of Acapulco, Mexico, as Hurricane Otis intensified. The death toll from the Category 5 storm has risen to 43, according to Guerrero governor. A front causing more heavy rain is expected to strengthen off Central America and move towards southern Mexico.
Tomorrow night, at the latest on Tuesday, there will be electricity in the houses of Acapulco. This is admirable because it is not done anywhere else in the world after a tragedy. You don't manage to re-establish the electricity supply so quickly. This will allow gas stations to start distributing fuel.
No. European firefighters are returning to their routine duties, but union leaders are emphasizing the urgent necessity for increased investment in additional personnel and equipment in the Mediterranean countries that have been severely affected by these wildfires. Firefighting unions in Europe are concerned about the increasing workload from summer wildfires, which is putting their health at risk, impacting morale and potentially damaging their disaster response capacity. Climate change is increasing extreme weather frequency and severity, but firefighter numbers have not increased in tandem. In 2022, the European Union had 360,000 professional firefighters, down by 2,800 from the previous year. Union leaders are calling for more investment in equipment and training to prepare firefighters for workplace-related illness and accidents. Turkey is commemorating its 100-year anniversary as a republic with nationwide celebrations. The celebration was relatively subdued, featuring a firework and drone show in Istanbul and a procession of 100 naval ships. Turkish leaders and ministers, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, celebrated the centenary of the Republic of Turkey. Notably, there was no grand gala reception, and many of the festivities plans have been called off against the backdrop of Israel-Hamas conflict. While the fans across the globe are still trying to come to terms with the sudden death of popular sitcom Friends actor Matthew Perry, well-wishers laid flowers and other tributes on Sunday at actor's Los Angeles home. The Friends star died in his home in an apparent drowning this weekend. Perry was born in Massachusetts and largely raised in Canada after his parents divorced. He played Chandler Bing for 10 seasons on Friends. As per the police report, Perry was found dead in a hot tub at his Los Angeles home Saturday afternoon. While fans fondly remember him as Chandler from Friends, they also liked Perry, the person in real life.
From what I heard, his stories and what I've read, all the people that he helped, he knew a lot of people. There's a lot of people with addiction, and he helped a lot of people. So that to me is, he gave back to his community, he gave back to people. So that was very unselfish and super nice, very giving. That speaks very well of him. So how can anybody not like somebody that gives what they have? He was very fortunate. Oh, I love his sense of humor. I know he didn't want to be remembered as the show from Friends, but it's impossible. How could you not? He was Friends. It just feels, it's just unreal to know that he's already gone. He's such a young age.
Friends, featuring Perry as one of the key stars, aired 236 episodes from 1994 to 2004 and remains widely popular in syndication. Let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. The death toll in Kazakhstan's coal mine fire accident rose to 45 on Sunday. The mine, owned by ArcelorMittal, supposedly caught fire due to methane blast. A dog Halloween contest was held in Peru to choose the best-dressed canine out of many cute participants dressed as Chucky, Naruto, pirates, brides and superheroes, and so on, eager to claim the title of the best costume. The top 3 most creative costumes were decided by an applausometer at the event, and winners went home with prizes of dog food products. The streets of Key West in Florida were filled with dancing unicorns, colorful floats and marching groups during the 2023 Fantasy Fest parade. The parade is a part of the 10-day Halloween festival featuring costume theme events. The festival began in 1979 to boost tourism in the downtown area. Dressed as Spider-Man, around 1,000 people gathered in Argentina's capital to break a world record for the most people dressed as the famous Marvel superhero at a single public event. The participants had to provide signatures and get their photo taken as documentation to provide to the record-keeping group, hoping to obtain Guinness World Records title. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Horrific train collision in India's Andhra Pradesh claims at least 10 lives. We tell you about the life of Homi Bhabhas, father of Indian nuclear program, on his birth anniversary. We'll show you the festive spirit in Trafalgar Square ahead of the Indian auspicious festival of Diwali.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and let's have a look at the headlines once again. UN Security Council to hold an emergency meeting on UAE's request to seek pause to Gaza fighting. US President calls Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, urges to protect civilians and increase aid to Gaza. UN Chief Antonio Guterres says that protection of civilians in Gaza conflict is paramount, warns Gaza growing more desperate by the hour. In sports, India remains unbeaten, registers 6th consecutive win by defeating England in Cricket World Cup encounter. DD India continues to bring you the latest from the Israel-Gaza conflict. Even as the death toll in Gaza has crossed 8,000 and over 21,000 people are injured in Israel's bombardment on the Gaza Strip. The situation in West Bank also remains tense, with 111 people dead and over 2,000 injured in Israeli strikes. Our correspondent Amritpal Singh takes stock of the public anger on the streets of Ramallah in Palestine.
Most of the casualties are happening in the Gaza Strip, with Israel stepping up its military campaign. But Israel is also hitting targets in West Bank. I'm right now standing inside Palestine and West Bank, and if I can ask my camera person to show you the scenes here, the people are protesting after a target was hit inside West Bank. So far, in various strikes within West Bank, over 110 people have been killed and many more arrested. In hundreds, about 700 people arrested. Arrests are being made every day, and over 2,000 people have been injured. So the people here ask that what is the logic of arresting or hitting targets inside West Bank? Though Israel says that Hamas has its supporters in West Bank and they are targeting them. But the question being asked in these protests is that why is Israel hitting them when Israel claims it is not hitting civilians. Civilians are merely collateral damage, and it is hitting Hamas terrorist bases. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in West Bank, Palestine.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news with a focus on Israel-Hamas conflict. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited southern naval base in Ashdod on Sunday. Netanyahu met with Israeli naval forces and greeted them for the work they are doing in protecting the country. The Russian Republic of Dagestan's capital city, Makhachkala, was forced to close its airport on October 29th after a crowd of demonstrators supporting Palestine poured the runway. Israeli authorities have diverted all aircraft bound for Makhachkala, Dagestan, and to other airports due to reports of demonstrators denouncing Israeli actions in Gaza. A large groups of protesters entering the air terminal and storming various rooms with Palestinian flags were seen in the footage. Israel has urged Russian authorities to protect Israelis and Jews in their jurisdictions following potential reprisals by pro-Palestinian protesters in Dagestan. The airport will be closed until November 6th. And the families of Israeli hostages held by Hamas protested outside the Israeli president's house in Jerusalem. They insisted that the safety of their loved ones should be a priority for the Israeli government. Relatives of the hostages formed a human chain holding up flyers with information and pictures of their kidnapped loved ones. A chain of demonstrators lined up in front of the Qatar embassy in London to show solidarity with Israel and call for the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Qatar mediated negotiations between Israel and Hamas aimed at de-escalating fighting in Gaza. As the Israel-Hamas conflict ravages lives, a resident drove to the northern Israel feed starving animals left behind by the owners fleeing to save lives. Passionate towards animals, Lily Perry feeds stray cats and dogs every day in areas where they barely get anything to eat. Pope Francis on Sunday called for a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas and renewed an appeal for the release of hostages held by the Palestinian militant group in Gaza. Francis spoke as Israeli forces waged ground operations against Hamas in Gaza in what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the second phase of a 3-week-old war aimed at crushing the group. India's External Affairs Minister SJS Shanker met this morning with the families of the 8 Indians detained in Qatar. He stressed that government attaches the highest importance to the case, fully share the concerns and pain of the families, underlying that government will continue to make all efforts to secure their release and will coordinate closely with the families in that regard. This is what he tweeted. At the ongoing G7 meeting in Osaka, Japan, India is represented by Union Trade and Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. On the sidelines of the G7 summit, Minister Goyal held bilateral meetings. He spoke with the French Minister for Foreign Trade regarding avenues to give further impetus to growing India-France economic partnership. Minister Goyal also met with the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, and discussed progress of the India-EU Free Trade Agreement negotiations. In a groundbreaking international development, the G7 countries and the European Union will establish a voluntary code of conduct to govern advanced artificial intelligence systems today at Brussels. This ambitious 11-point code aims to enhance global AI governance standards, prioritizing safety and trustworthiness. It emphasizes risk mitigation, incident handling, transparent reporting, and robust security measures. The EU leads in regulation with the AI Act, while Japan, the US, and Southeast Asian countries pursue to a more hands-off approach to spur economic growth. The code fills the regulatory gap, promoting responsible AI governance. Indian External Affairs Minister SJS Shanker will pay a 4-day visit to Portugal and Italy from Tuesday with an aim to further bolster India's bilateral ties with the 2 key European nations. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, in the first leg of the trip, Shankar will visit Portugal on October 31st and November 1st and will be in Italy on November 2nd and 3rd. The death toll in India's Andra train collision reached 13 as rescue operations continue in Vizianagaram district. 2 NDRF teams also joins the search and rescue operation with Railways, RPF, local police. According to the officials, it was a rear-end collision between the Visakhapatnam-Palasa passenger train and the Visakhapatnam-Ragada passenger train. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday condoled the loss of lives in the train accident and announced an ex gratia of 2 lakh from the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for the next of kin of each deceased and 50,000 for the injured of the Andhra Pradesh train accident. Meanwhile, Union Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnav also monitored the situation from War Room in Delhi, where he says the aftermath of train collision in Andhra Pradesh. The minister earlier said that all injured people have been shifted to different hospitals for treatment and announced a compensation of 10 lakh for families of the dead. A series blast at a prayer meeting in the southern Indian state of Kerala's Kalamassery killed at least 2 people and left several injured. In response to the tragedy, Kerala's Chief Minister Pinarayi expressed his condolences and called the incident very unfortunate. He also declared the formation of a special 20-member team to conduct a thorough investigation. This special investigative team will be led by Additional Director General of Police, Law and Order, comprising 20 members with expertise in various areas. The team is tasked with unraveling the circumstances surrounding the blast and ensuring justice is served. According to the officials, a man has surrendered before police claiming to be responsible for blasts. Indian and Malaysian Army have initiated exercise Harimau Shai 2023, a joint bilateral training exercise in Umroi Cantonment, India. A woman soldier of the Indian Army is seen performing cithering operations from a helicopter. The Indian Army troops and Malaysian Army are also enhancing the jointness of day by night patrolling and beating the rigors of dense jungle terrain. Exercise Harimau Shai is aimed to enhance the level of defense cooperation between the Indian Army and the Malaysian Army, which will also foster the bilateral relations between the two nations. Today is the 114th birth anniversary of father of India's nuclear program, Dr. Homi Bhabhas. Here's a look at his major contributions, achievements, and lesser-known facts about the renowned nuclear physicist.
Coupled with a doubling of the world's population within the next 100 years, which is the least that we can expect, this would exhaust the known reserves of fossil fuels in under a century.
Homi Bhabhas, hailed as the pioneer of Indian nuclear advancements, possessed an indomitable spirit that propelled his meteoric rise to greatness. Born into a wealthy family of industrialists and businessmen in Mumbai, his destined path seemed predetermined. However, his restless soul yearned for the ethereal secrets of physics. In 1927, he embarked on a transformative journey to Cambridge University, a fateful decision that would set the stage for his monumental contributions. In a letter to his father in 1928, young Homi described his passion for physics.
I seriously say to you that business or a job as an engineer is not the thing for me. It is totally foreign to my nature and radically opposed to my temperament and opinions. Physics is my line. I know I shall do great things here, for each man can do best and excel in only that thing for which he is passionately fond, in which he believes, as I do, that he has the ability to do it, that he has in fact been born and destined to do it. Besides, India is not a land where science cannot be carried on.
Armed with a prestigious PhD in nuclear physics, Bhabhas returned to his motherland, India, swathed in promise. As the inferno of World War II raged on, Bhabhas embarked on the mission of enlightenment at the Indian Institute of Science. The seeds of change had been sown, leading to the inception of the legendary Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in 1945. He established the esteemed Bhabhas Atomic Research Center and orchestrated the groundbreaking UN Conference on Atomic Energy, leaving an indelible mark on global nuclear discourse. On a fateful day in 1966, Bhabhas' vibrant existence was abruptly extinguished. A tragic plane crash, where moments before a rendezvous with destiny in Geneva silenced the illustrious physicist, leaving behind an irreplaceable void. His legacy, however, burns brightly, forever etched in the annals of scientific achievement. Sujata Lochab for DD India.
Now, some good news from the Indian state of Gujarat's Ahmedabad. A student of 8th standard has developed GPS technology-based safety shoes for Indian Army personnel. With the shoes on, if they get into any trouble, their location can easily be traced. The shoes will serve to ensure the safety of women, children, and the elderly, in addition to the Army soldiers.
Atman acrobatic shoe is a wearable safety device which is compact, concealed and a customizable device. This assures the safety of each and every people who wears. This can be fitted in any shoe you give. And another thing is that this helps you in SOS situations. For example, women safety, child safety, kids kidnapping safety, blind safety, old home people safety, armed forces. Whenever you are in a SOS situation, you just need to press the button, SOS button. That will trigger GSM and GPS and send the latitude and longitude to the registered number devices, which will help them to find them where are they. This is a two-way communication. If they also need, the relative also need to see their location, they will be provided with a code and a password. Just they need to enter in the SMS and they will get their live location. And it updates automatically every 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Whole thing is customizable.
And ahead of the Indian auspicious festival of Diwali, the Mayor of London organised the annual Diwali celebration at Trafalgar Square. The free public event had a large number of audience witnessing Indian traditional dances, music, activities and food from various parts of India that capture the festival spirit.
So this is the first time that I'm experiencing Diwali outside of India. So it feels great and it feels like home away from home. I was craving Indian food and I finally got to eat here. And the festive atmosphere is like the perfect beginning for Diwali. So yeah, this is very a good time and also we are not feeling homesick at all.
Let's take a look at other stories making news. India and Kazakhstan's joint military exercise Kazin begins today. The Indian Army and Indian Air Force contingent comprising 120 personnel are taking part in the 7th edition of joint military exercise. The 13-day-long exercise will be conducted at Kazakhstan. Ahead of the winters and festival of Diwali in India, the overall air quality index in New Delhi stands at 322, making it in very poor category. However, the overall air quality in Mumbai is in the moderate category with the AQI at 128. The Indian President's house, Rashtrapati Bhavan's North and South block lit up in red as part of the Go Red campaign for dyslexia awareness. Along with that, the Indian Parliament and India Gate were also lit in red. The move has been made in honor of International Dyslexia Awareness Month celebrated in October. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Geopolitical tensions in West Asia affect Asian share market and oil prices. Verstappen takes record 16th win of the season in Mexico. Manchester City outsmart neighbours Manchester United at Old Trafford.
Welcome to Jaipur.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. And now the Secretary, Department of Science and Technology, Professor Abhay Karandikar, has said that India can steer 6G standardization and become a global exporter of such technologies. Addressing a session at the Indian Mobile Congress in New Delhi, he said, India is contributing hugely to the massive escalation of global data volume and hoped that by 2030, India's share may increase to 1/3 of the total data generated. He further added that India has an ecosystem to bring the country to a position of strength in terms of mobile network technologies. United Auto Workers leaders approved a tentative deal on Sunday with Ford. It includes a pay hike of at least 30% for full-time workers and could more than double pay for others. It also includes $8.1 billion in manufacturing investments and could give workers up to $70,000 in extra pay over the 2-year life of the contract. While bargaining continues at General Motors without any deal, UAW President Shawn Fain on Saturday ordered a walkout at GM's Spring Hill, Tennessee engine and assembly plant. Meanwhile, General Motors and Ford shares have fallen roughly a fifth since the beginning of the strike on September 15th. Stellantis shares are down just 1%. Sources say that one key sticking point with GM was retiree pension costs. GM has many more retirees eligible for that increase than either Ford or Stellantis because its workforce was far larger in the 1980s and 1990s. GM said it was disappointed by the UAW decision to strike Spring Hill. The Spring Hill walkout could hobble GM's large pickup production as well as assembly of other popular GM vehicles. In a monumental turn of events, the Writers Guild of America made significant strides toward resolving its 148-day strike, one of the longest standoffs in Hollywood's history. After weeks of intense negotiations, the WGA reached a tentative agreement on a new contract with entertainment companies. The tentative deal, a result of extensive discussions between the WGA and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, addresses several crucial issues raised by the writers, while the exact language of the contract is yet to be released. In a groundbreaking move, White House is set to unveil an extensive executive order on artificial intelligence today, aimed at tackling immigration, safety, and boosting technological advancements. The order mandates assessments for advanced AI models used by federal workers and facilitate the entry of skilled workers. This comes as the U.S. government seeks to regulate AI amidst global concerns and ahead of an international summit on AI risks. The order would also require federal agencies, including defense and intelligence, to evaluate the integration of AI into their work with a focus on cybersecurity, while the EU is working on its own regulations. The US is in early stages of developing a bipartisan legislation on artificial intelligence. Asian share markets, on the other hand, were mixed on Monday as Israel's push into Gaza stirred fears of a wider conflict. Ahead of central bank meetings in the US, UK and Japan, where a policy tightening may occur, a yield on 10-year treasuries reached a 16-year high of 5.021% on Monday after rising 30 basis points so far this month. The market has also priced in 165 basis points of easing for 2024, starting around mid-year. Experts are persuaded that the Federal Reserve will remain unchanged at this week's policy meeting due to the steep increase in market borrowing costs. And Asian share markets opened on mixed notes on Monday amid fears of widening conflict as Israel pushes into Gaza. With the Israel-Hamas conflict entering an undeclared second phase, the upcoming central bank meetings in the United States, Britain and Japan might see a policy tightening. Major businesses showed underwhelming earnings, contributing to the S&P 500's retreat into correction territory at 4,117. Ahead of the Fed policy meeting and China's manufacturing data later this week, oil prices slipped $1 a barrel on Monday. The price drop came as investors showed caution due to the current geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Brent crude futures dropped by 1.1% to come at $89.50 a barrel by 0001 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at 84.54 barrel, down by 1.2%. Earlier on Friday, the prices had closed on a rise of 3% as Israel-Hamas conflict stepped up, stoking worries about the impact of the region that accounts for a third of global oil production. The outcome of the upcoming Federal Reserve monetary policy meeting, U.S. employment data, earnings from tech giant Apple Inc. and China's report on October manufacturing and services PMIs will be the deciding factors for an impact on fuel demand. Now you're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sport. And India defeated England by 100 runs in the ICC World Cup in Lucknow to register their 6th consecutive match. Indian pacers Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Shami wreaked havoc to dismiss England for 129 runs. Earlier, England restricted India to 229 for 9 from 50 overs after electing to field first. Rohit Sharma led the charge from the front with 87 runs. Surya Kumar Yadav made 49 while KL Rahul made 39 runs. With this win, India moved to the top of the league table undefeated in the tournament so far. For England, this is their 4th consecutive loss and 5th overall. It seems that the defending champions campaign is all but over now. After India's outstanding victory against England in Lucknow, DD India's Abhishek Mahajan caught with the fans.
We have good spinners, we have good pacers, everyone is good and the fielding is excellent. We are good we are taking catches, we are not misfielding and our morale is very boosted up.
We had a good total on the board and we were able to defend it. So that's all what matters. Win is what matters and I think we are very, very happy about it. It's in a way very, very plus for India. You know, the kind of the bench strength that we have today, I don't think any other team has it today.
How India bowled and came back in the game, especially Shami Bumrah, how they started the innings for India, it was really tremendous. All bowlers are performing their best and it is really boosting the team's confidence and everything.
We enjoy a lot and India is going to win the final. We were certain that our bowling is strong and we will come back.
On Red Bull's triple world champion Max Verstappen made Formula One history as the first driver to take 16 victories in a season. He won a crash-halted and action-packed Mexico City Grand Prix on Sunday. The 26-year-old Dutch also equaled French great Alain Prost's haul of 51 career wins with his 5th win in 6 editions of the Mexican race of the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Manchester City registered a dominant Derby Day victory at neighbours Manchester United on Sunday. The 3-0 win at Old Trafford took the defending champions up to 3rd, 2 points behind Premier League leaders Tottenham. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Prasar Bharati from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.